Hello, and welcome to exercise application video number 19, I think. Peep the hat, that's fun. But anyways, today was a shoulder day, just a quick 30-minute shoulder day, but what I want to talk about today is acids and buffering in our body. So in my last video, I talked about the 3 sources of acid in the body and how as we exercise, those increase, but I want to start talking about today what we actually do with those acids. So when I was in there, even though at rest you're accumulating some acid, just then I was accumulating lots of acid, right? So one of the things we talked about is the lactate and hydrogen ions. I was doing sets of shoulder presses until failure, and what actually caused me to fatigue is partially the hydrogen ions, the buildup of that, because when I'm hydrolyzing my ATP, number one, I am creating lots of hydrogen because I'm getting that ADP, inorganic phosphate, hydrogen ions. I'm creating acid, thus lowering my pH, making the state I'm in less stable, less sustainable. The other thing is lactate. So as I was doing those and fatiguing in fast glycolysis, as that pyruvate is converted into lactate when we have excess NADH, you also get the release of hydrogen ions, which again acts as an acid. The other thing, I'm creating lots of CO2. My pyruvate, is being converted into acetyl-CoA, and to do that we lop off a carbon that's combined with oxygen we breathe in. I'm breathing out carbon dioxide, but I'm also accumulating some of that. So our carbon dioxide, which I'll talk about in another video, actually acts as an acid when it combines with our blood, because our blood being mainly water, the carbon dioxide dissolves and creates carbonic acid, which then can dissociate into free hydrogen ions and bicarbonate, which acts as a conjugate base to our acid. But today what I want to talk about is how our muscle buffers. And so it's not necessarily a pure chemical definition when we're talking about buffering, but our muscle buffers by just kicking hydrogen ions outside of the muscle into the blood, which then becomes the blood issue. That's when we deal with the conjugate base, the bicarbonate, and the carbonic acid. But in the muscle, we have we have three. One deals with, well, we have three. The first one is the sodium hydrogen exchanger. It takes sodium inside the cell, kicks hydrogen out into the blood. Because our muscles, again, in the presence of those hydrogen ions, our myosin, our actin denatures. The hydrogen blocks calcium from binding to troponin, and if troponin is not released, we can't have those interactions between our myosin and actin heads, therefore we can't have muscular contraction. Hydrogen also ruins things like our phosphofructokinase, our rate-limiting enzymes, and glycolysis, so a lot goes wrong if we have too much hydrogen ions, and so we want that out. The second one is the monocarboxylic acid transporter, the MCT. It shuttles lactate and hydrogen ions out through the same transporter or pump. Lactate goes to the liver, where it goes through a form of gluconeogenesis called the Cori cycle, where it is then recycled as glucose. Hydrogen ions contribute to acidity in the blood. And then finally, we have the sodium bicarbonate cotransporter. So what it does is kicks chloride out so that we can send another negative ion in, because chloride has a -1 charge. So then we send in bicarbonate, which bicarbonate, the hydrogen ions in there can bind to, because it's a conjugate base. It's only different by 1 hydrogen, because when those hydrogen ions are bound up in an acid form, they're not contributing to pH, so our body's protected from the acidity. So, but also we send sodium in. And so in my next video, I will talk about what kind of happens once we send that acidity out into the blood, and that becomes its issue. But during exercise, we increase our acid production, so just then I have increased my acidity, and there are multiple ways we can deal with it that have to relate to this acidity. For example, carbon dioxide. There's a lot of things I'm not explaining in this that I'll explain in another video, but long story short, we exhale it. So when you're after exhaling, you're actually focusing on your expiration, because you're trying to get that acid out via carbon dioxide and actually water. Even if you don't notice it, if you put styrofoam over your mouth, you'll see some water on there when you're exhaling. So that was video 19 on how our muscle is actually buffering acid.